In 2021, David Gordon Green's Halloween Kills was released to mixed reviews. It was the second of three films in a trilogy that served as a sequel to the original 1978 Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis returned to her iconic role in 2018 as Laurie Strode with a new family. Sorry, Josh Hartnett and Daniel Harris. The ending of the 2018 film shows Michael Myers getting locked in a burning basement where he presumably dies, but it also served as what I call a safe ending. An ending that could both spawn a sequel or be a comfortable ending for the story. But money talks, and two more sequels were ordered to finish the story. So Michael did survive the burning basement. Halloween Kills was originally slated to be released in 2020 but was pushed back to 2021. David Gordon Green returned to direct, and Green also helped write along with Danny McBride and Scott Teems. Halloween Kills serves as a love letter to 1980s slasher films, but fans hated it for its social commentary and idiotic characters. The slasher genre is honestly one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and I love turning my brain off and watching a slasher villain go to work. Too many times in this franchise have they tried to add unnecessary lore to Michael Myers. I think it's just nice to see Michael Myers go on a bloody rampage with some basic character development that doesn't go too over the top. It's not without its flaws, but we'll get into that. I don't really feel like getting into a big copyright dispute with Universal like I did with my Halloween Ends videos, so for the footage I'm just going to try to keep it as like still images from the film or footage that's shown in the trailer. So, let's walk through Halloween Kills and I'll explain why I think this is Michael's masterpiece. A big complaint that people had with 2018's Halloween was the character of Cameron cheating on Allison at the Halloween dance and then just leaving the film. But Halloween Kills introduces us to Cameron right away. He's trying to get a hold of Oscar because he's unaware of the chaos that's been going on in Haddonfield. He comes across Officer Hawkins, who somehow survived being stabbed in the throat following the events of that terrible plot twist in the previous film. We flash back to 1978 to one of the best flashback sequences I've ever seen in a film. Somehow David Gordon Green was able to capture the feeling and the vibe of the original Halloween, and I get the vibe that this is their favorite part of making this film. But this isn't just a cheap flashback, because we learn that Hawkins was present the night of Michael's first murder spree and his arrest. We learn that when Michael was a kid, he just stared out of his bedroom window, staring at Haddonfield, or maybe staring at his reflection in the window. Lonnie Elam also had an encounter with Michael Myers in 1978, and I love how this film is establishing that there are many characters other than Laurie Strode who Michael Myers has affected in a negative way. I don't want to spend too much time on this flashback scene, but it's just so well done and so well thought out. The Myers house is even a perfect replica of the original film, and even has small details like the window being cracked and the dead dog at the Myers house. Hawkins accidentally shoots his partner instead of shooting Michael, and when Michael walks away, Hawkins misses every single shot that he takes. This is our first example of characters in this film not being able to finish off Michael Myers. It's an interesting premise of characters being blindsided by their fear and stupidity. It doesn't necessarily work in every scene. Like here I would have preferred the idea of Michael being able to take down two police officers instead of just narrowly escaping the one, but dumb cops are a staple in horror films. Even in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy is screaming bloody murder, and a police officer just calmly tells her that everything is going to be alright. Plus, with this version of Michael Myers, this film is very safe in how it treats him being shot. If he gets shot too many times, the audience has no choice but to think that he's a supernatural being, which is something the writers wanted to avoid. So in a way, the movie is smart by having its characters be dumb. But Dr. Loomis surprisingly shows up, unfortunately not played by the late Donald Pleasance, but some great prosthetics from Christopher Nelson helped Tom Jones Jr. pull off this controversial addition to the movie. I feel like when you take a risk like this, you have to make sure it pays off, and it really does here. Michael Myers is surrounded by the police in front of his house, and the tableau here is a fantastic recreation of the opening of the 1978 film, when little Michael Myers is confronted by his parents. After our classic Halloween intro involving multiple pumpkins as a symbol for our angry mob that will come up later, we go to Mick's Bar on Halloween night 2018. Fun fact, the song that's being sung for karaoke is actually a real song by the Coupe de Villes, which is a band by John Carpenter, Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed Halloween 3, and Nick Castle, who played the Shape in 1978. Another one of their songs is played in the original Halloween film, when Laurie and Annie are smoking in the car. We're shown a couple more characters who were briefly in the previous film, like the nurse and the doctor who are briefly shown during Michael's killing spree. Our legacy characters are also introduced here, which is weird because I think they would have benefited the 2018 film had they have been in that one. Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall, Lonnie Elam, played by Robert Longstreet, Marion Chambers, played by the returning Nancy Stevens, and Lindsay Wallace, played by the returning Kyle Richards. Tommy tells everyone the story of Michael Myers, or the Haddonfield Boogeyman. Tommy seems to have taken over the Dr. Loomis role in this film as the one who spews out scary stories about Michael. While Dr. Sartain was blatantly the new Loomis, he didn't necessarily fill the role as well as I think Tommy does. Anthony Michael Hall's performance has been criticized to death, but I personally think it's an important part of a Halloween film to have somebody like Dr. Loomis running around telling ghost stories like this. Even in the Halloween films that I don't like Halloween 5 and 6, Dr. Loomis is one of the best parts. And Halloween H2O and Resurrection seem so bland because they're missing this character. So, I'm on board with the character of Tommy Doyle, even if he's over the top. Donald Pleasance was even on record saying that he thought the original character of Dr. Loomis in 1978 was written way over the top. So, if Loomis can be over the top, I think Tommy can too. 19 minutes into the film, we finally pick up where we left off in 2018. The Strode women are in the back of a truck that picked them up, and the Haddonfield Fire Department is on their way to Laurie's burning house. Laurie screams, "Let it burn." It could be referring to her home or Michael Myers. I love hearing Michael called names other than just he or him. In 1978, Loomis even screams, "The evil is gone," referring to Michael. One of the firefighters falls through the floor and into the basement that Michael was locked in. Michael was hiding in the closet, and it reminds me of that dog meme where he's sitting in the kitchen that's on fire that says this is fine. Anyway, Michael kills an injured firefighter. Another firefighter reaches down, and this is how Michael escapes. I love a lot about this scene, but I personally would have rather not see this escape. The idea of Michael escaping the fire without us knowing how would be more haunting than seeing step by step just how it's done. But we do get an amazing slaughter of the fire department, so I guess that makes up for it. There's some fantastic stunt choreography here that shows us that a group of armed people are no match for Michael Myers. There's a side plot in here where Laurie Strode is at the hospital, much like the original Halloween 2, but unlike that movie, Michael and Laurie will no longer meet at the hospital, ultimately making it feel like Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't even belong in this movie. Like, really? Once she gets to the hospital, you could almost remove her entirely and the movie wouldn't change. I prefer the Shape not having a motive and just killing for the sake of killing, but if that's the direction you're taking, I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis needs to be all over this film. Karen's husband and Allison's father, Roy's death, actually seems to hit them in this film. At the end of the 2018 film, it seemed like they didn't even care that he died, but I love seeing them take a minute to actually grieve. Unlike Laurie, both of these characters actually improve a lot in this film. Allison seemed like the natural successor to Laurie Strode as the new final girl of Halloween, and unfortunately it never really played out that way, but I love seeing her eventually take initiative to try to hunt down Michael, as her grandmother would have done. Sandra, played by Diva Tyler, the cemetery worker in the previous film, returns. She's in this entire trilogy, and here's a crazy fact. Diva Tyler is only in one less film than Danielle Harris. She's playing with a drone with her husband, and they fly it into the bathroom, only for someone to throw it out. When her husband goes to the bathroom to turn on the lights, Michael punches the lights and knocks them out. I think Michael climbs back out the window, and by the noises from the bathroom and the bandages on his hand, we can assume that Michael was tending to his wounds in the bathroom. Sandra somehow can't escape her own house, in true slasher film fashion, and Michael grabs a light tube and breaks it. I love how David Gordon Green and company brought back the childhood curiosity of Michael Myers for this version, because he stabs her in the neck with the tube and just stares at her and tilts his head as he's watching her and twists it. He's like a predator just toying with his prey. He has no reason to bring Sandra's husband into the kitchen and seemingly test out knives on him in front of her. He just does it. He's ultimately just a 6-year-old boy playing with toys at this point, except his toys are deadly weapons that he uses on people. Sheriff Barker is such a wasted character in this entire trilogy. He's pretty much just around to talk about how bad the situation is, even though had he have listened to Laurie in the previous film, things wouldn't be this bad. In this scene, he's pretty much like, "Oh, this is bad, let's get Michael Myers." And that's the extent of his character in this film. Cameron ends up calling his dad, as the legacy characters discuss about how when the boogeyman returns, they'll kill him with a bat named Huckleberry. The fact that this is how Tommy and the others spend every Halloween night is kind of a testament to the damage that Michael Myers did to the people that he comes into contact with. It's like having functional anxiety to an extent. They've hyped up the legend of the Haddonfield boogeyman so much that it's like he isn't just a normal man anymore, even though he is. This Michael Myers doesn't need the body count of the previous timelines, or a cult, or the motive of killing his family members to amp up the character, because the everlasting effects he's had on the people that he's come into contact with does it for him. Everyone finds out about the murders from a news report that is telling everyone to stay inside. They say the murders may or may not be related to the Smiths Grove bus crash, but there are 2 people from Smiths Grove that are still missing. That'll come into play in a bit. I think it's weird how the news is saying that the murders may or may not be related to the Smiths Grove crash, but are quick to show newspaper clippings and pictures from the victims of the original Haddonfield massacre in 1978. Vanessa gets in her car to leave, and someone is in the back seat, which we would naturally assume is Michael Myers. This is all it takes for Tommy Doyle to jump into action, and he grabs Huckleberry. Marianne Chambers lets out our first Evil Dies Tonight, and can I get everybody to comment Evil Dies Tonight in the chat, please? The guy in the car is listening to the same song at Smiths Grove in the opening of the 2018 film, which is our first hint that this might not be Michael Myers. He takes off and crashes the car, which is hint number 2, because Michael Myers can drive. So needless to say, it's the other Smiths Grove patient, and this man really means no harm. His name is Mr. Tovoli. He's just a guy out of his environment with some mental issues, trying to find safety. Tommy makes it a point to say that he wants to rip Michael's mask off before he kills him, which is something I want to get into a little bit later, because it seems like the mask means something in this timeline. Meet Big John and Little John. They live in a remodeled Myers house. Either they got this for a bargain or they're true crime junkies. A couple kids in silver shamrock masks prank them, and the Johns threaten them by telling them the legend of Michael Myers. So this is twice so far that this movie has told us about Michael's backstory, even though it's as simple as they come, and everybody who's watching this movie already knows it. One of the major complaints I have about the original Halloween 2 is that it spends most of the time at the hospital showing Laurie doing nothing. So Halloween Kills decides to have Laurie spending most of her time at the hospital doing nothing. It's such a weird choice. I do really like the conflict that Allison has here, where she discusses that her mother raised her to pretend that Michael wasn't real, while Karen, on the other hand, was raised to protect herself from Michael. It picks up on the conflicted feelings that Allison has for her mother and her grandmother. From Karen's point of view, Laurie put them in the path of Michael, but Allison knows that Dr. Sartain was responsible for bringing Michael to Laurie. Sartain, very similar to some of the viewers, believed that Michael was always after Laurie Strode, but he wasn't. He pretty much doesn't acknowledge her existence unless she's in his path. She's no different than Annie, Linda, Bob, the podcasters, or the cemetery caretakers. He doesn't care about Laurie, but she wasted her entire life thinking that he did. Allison and Karen think that Michael was killed, but they're told otherwise, and Allison is the one who springs to action to continue the hunt for Michael. Cameron brings Allison with the mob, as Tommy is arranging groups. The mob mentality that this movie has is divided, to say the least. I think the hate for it is a bit overblown, and I don't think this movie does anything too differently than other Halloween films have delved into. Even in Halloween 4, there's an angry mob assembled that leads to the death of an innocent person. While strength in numbers is a productive way to make change, a lot of times angry mobs deliver the wrong message and messy outcomes. Sure, the mob scenes and kills are more drawn out and longer than the scenes in Halloween 4, but I don't think it ruins the pacing of this movie at all. Tommy tells his group that Michael's game is the element of surprise, and when you think you're going one way, he'll pop out in another place. And that's how they'll defeat him, by using his own technique against him. It's a little neat hearing in-universe characters break down Michael's technique like this. Like, we've seen Michael disappear behind hedges and whatnot, but what he's actually doing is outsmarting people and going where you don't expect him to be. Lindsay, Marianne, Vanessa, and Marcus come across some kids playing on the playground. The kids are presumably the same kids wearing the silver shamrock masks in the previous film, and they tell Lindsay that a man in a white mask has been playing hide and seek with them and hiding behind trees. When Lindsay sends them home, Michael jumps on the car just like he did to Marianne and Loomis's car in 1978. Michael grabs Marianne's hair and rips a lock out of it. It's small things like this that slasher films do that stick with me. Finally, she holds a gun to him and is about to deliver the death blow, and she tells Michael that this is for Dr. Loomis. From 1978 until his death, Loomis had been trying to either kill Michael or have him executed, and she's finally going to see to it. But she's out of bullets. Michael kills her, and this is the second time that her character has returned to the franchise only to be killed. Marcus tries to choke Michael, but isn't smart enough to grab the knife from him, so Michael stabs him in the eye. And Vanessa is shooting at Michael, but Michael kicks the door, which hits the gun and makes her shoot herself. Now, that kill was pretty dumb, but Marianne and Marcus's death are just some examples of when unprepared people try to get involved in mob justice. No one here was prepared for this situation. They kind of just joined the group and thought they could help, and ultimately paid the price for it. Vanessa's death is over the top and just some slasher movie cheese. It's dumb, but so are a lot of slasher movies. This scene is probably the litmus test for deciding whether this movie or slasher films in general are for you. Lindsay hits Michael with a sack of bricks, and Michael grabs her and pins her against the car. She grabs his mask and he lets her go in order to fix it, which his mask seems to be both his strength and his weakness. Michael hunts Lindsay, and she hides underneath a bridge in one of the most intense scenes, not only in this film, but in this franchise. We're watching her try not to breathe or make a sound as Michael is near, and when we think she's safe, he stops, and she's watching his reflection in the water as he starts walking again. Just a tremendously shot and acted sequence. Karen discovers that Allison left the hospital, while Laurie is still unaware that Michael survived. Conveniently enough, Frank Hawkins gets put in the same room as Laurie, so they can reconcile in a bit. Laurie tells him that she always liked him. Frank helped her at a bar one night when she was drunk, and it seems like they could have been a thing, except the trauma of Michael Myers ultimately ruined Laurie's life. Despite them wanting to be together, all they did was hold hands. Plus, Frank knew that Laurie always wanted Ben Tramer, who for some reason isn't in any of these movies. I don't think if him being in the movies would have helped, but if you're going to bring back Sheriff Brackett for some reason who doesn't do much, you might as well bring back Ben Tramer. Laurie also tells the nurse to help Frank and give him some extra drugs, which could probably lead to this poor nurse losing her job, but oh well. Lonnie is telling Allison some stories about her dad, and like I said earlier, I can't stress enough how important these scenes in this movie are to the character of Allison. Seeing her actually grieve is very important character development that was missing in the previous film. Tommy Doyle has found the car from the massacre a few minutes ago. They discover the bodies of Vanessa, Marcus, and Marianne, which Michael has strung up and put silver shamrock masks on them. It's nice to see that 40 years later, Michael never lost the childlike mindset of playing peekaboo and propping up the people that he's killed. I mentioned Sheriff Brackett. Well, he's working security at the hospital. He's telling Sheriff Barker that he wasn't there when Michael was captured in 1978 because he was telling his wife that their daughter Annie was killed, which is actually something that happens in Halloween 2, which is canceled from this timeline. But had he have been there, he would have finished the job by putting a bullet in Michael's head. I love how the mob at the hospital is starting to grow restless, and the police even acknowledge that they're understaffed and underprepared to deal with a crime scene of this magnitude. They're calling in people from neighboring cities like Russellville, but aren't even sure if they'll help. It makes Michael's murder spree more believable to see how unprepared everybody is, and the only ones who were prepared were the ones who were outcasted from the town and seemed like they were crazy. And the false panic that is caused because some people think that Michael is after Laurie makes it seem like the hospital is Michael's target. So a lot of police officers are here waiting for Michael instead of out in the town looking for him. Tommy Doyle gives a pretty great rally speech calling everyone to action to execute Michael. We're an hour into this movie and the Evil Dies Tonight chants start ramping up. The chant is hilarious and cringy, but the outrage that this chant caused is a bit much. There are only 40 minutes left here and the chants are finally starting to ramp up. They aren't entirely through the film like some people are led to believe. I also don't think it's as bad as people claim it is because most mobs need some sort of chant or call to action. It happens all the time and it's honestly a realistic take on mob mentality. I was on the count and I counted 22 Evil Dies Tonight in this film. I could be wrong, so if you had a different count, please let me know. but 22 is a lot less than I'd be led to believe considering the outrage that it got. Tommy breaks the news to Laurie that Michael was still alive and that he killed Marion. We get a glimpse into the mindset of Tommy Doyle. He says that since Laurie protected him in 1978, he's going to protect her now. It seems like this is why he takes it upon himself to take down Michael, and Karen assures Laurie that they aren't equipped to deal with the situation, and the mob doesn't even have the backing of the police. It's a little bit on the nose, but Karen tells Laurie that there's a system in place to deal with things like this, and Laurie tells her that the system failed. I don't want to get too political here, but it seems like in recent years, mobs we've seen have been organized because they believe that the system has failed. So yeah, it's a little bit on the nose, but whatever. Laurie violently injects herself with some pain reliever. I'm not sure why she did it so aggressively. Michael could have stabbed her with this, and it'd be more pleasant than this. Laurie grabs the knife that Allison left for her, and she seems ready, willing, and able to join the mob. Big John and Little John are having a conversation about bees. They hear a knock on the back door, and they think that they are the same kids from earlier, but when Little John goes to the back door, the front doorbell rings. I like to picture Michael wandering back and forth from the front door to the back like he did in 1978 before he killed his sister. The Johns continue to use Michael as a threat and yell about whose house this used to be, but while they go to the front door, someone has entered the back door because they didn't lock it. People could write this off as a stupid character decision, but I'd like to point out that in the original Halloween, Annie didn't realize that the car door was unlocked right after she went to grab the keys for the purpose of unlocking the car door. So keep in mind, dumb characters are a big trope in horror films. I love how we could see Michael wandering the house behind Little John, and the bloody handprint on the wall tells the Johns that someone in this house is not a child. The Johns are clearly another example of how unprepared characters are, because Big John grabs the world's smallest knife to defend himself. The Johns also split up while they're searching the house. Michael, clearly unimpressed by the work that the Johns have done to his home, stabs Big John and gouges out his eyes. Michael goes back to the window that he stood at in the earlier flashbacks before he notices Little John, and then Little John gets what's coming to him too. I'm assuming that if it wasn't for Michael being hunted, that his night probably would have ended here, because coming home and staring out the window was all he wanted to do. It also plays into the original tagline of the original film, The Night He Came Home. Even before he targets Laurie and her friends in 1978, he went back home, and only went after them when he saw that Laurie dropped off the key. So maybe in hindsight, he just targeted Laurie because she was a threat to his home. As this is happening, the mob at the hospital is wrongfully awaiting for Michael to arrive, and instead of Michael, they get the escaped mental patient, Mr. Tivoli. His mugshot appeared alongside Michael's on the news earlier, but the mob doesn't know the difference. I think this is bad casting because I think you could easily tell Michael and Mr. Tivoli apart. Mr. Tivoli looks like Danny DeVito, and Michael Myers is like a slimmer 6'3". On the other hand, the mob is just told that Michael is on the way to the hospital, and they are to execute him if they see him. So, they just go after the first suspicious-looking mental patient they see. Tommy even tells Sheriff Brackett at one point that Michael wore a mask, so how could they know that Mr. Tivoli isn't Michael? So, a man who spent years worrying about Michael's return doesn't even know what he looks like, so how could anyone else? Mr. Tivoli just came here for help because he was in the bus crash earlier and then the car crash, but the mob just riots and chases after this poor man, and it's heartbreaking. Despite Laurie and Karen screaming that it's not Michael, the mob doesn't listen, and they still go after him. Laurie even calls them sheep for not listening. They were told to kill Michael Myers, and that's what they plan on doing. Laurie rips open her wound, effectively putting an end to any Michael versus Laurie hopes that the audience would have had, but I'm okay with it. It's been done 7 times before this, so for the love of God, just keep them apart for a little bit. There's also a brief scene here where Oscar's mother discovers his dead body, and it's not shown much, but the small arc that we see her go through from this movie to Halloween Ends is a pretty nice touch. Just to see the effect that Michael has on people who are hardly in the film is just great to see. Laurie has a great line calling this Michael's masterpiece. The one night and 2 movies of Havoc are everything that Laurie, Tommy, Lindsay, Marianne, Lonnie, and Loomis all thought would happen but prayed never did. Hawkins takes us back to 1978, where the police were going to let Loomis shoot and kill Michael, but he felt sympathy for Michael and his parents, and he stopped Loomis. He thought that deep down inside it was someone's baby boy. Seeing this version of Michael beaten to the ground by the police is something I don't think we needed to see. We'll get there in a little bit, but we're going to see almost the same exact thing by the end of the movie, so I think ending the flashback at the beginning of the film was enough. But I think David Gordon Green and company wanted to spend as much time in this era, because when they made the 2018 film, they even wanted to go back and change the ending of the original film, but John Carpenter talked them out of it. It would have been interesting to see two stories going on alongside each other like The Godfather 2, the 1978 arrest of Michael, and the Halloween Kills story, but we'd be pushing over 2 hours if that was the case, so I guess we're stuck with this. But seeing a longer, drawn-out hunt for Michael in 1978 to go alongside the 2018 hunt would have been a unique parallel that I would have liked to see. On the top story of the hospital, Karen finds Mr. Tivoli and assures him that she won't hurt him. She tries to help him, but the mob won't have it, and it eventually leads to Mr. Tivoli breaking a window and jumping to his death to escape the mob. It's a controversial scene, and its social commentary on how mob justice isn't always the best is a bit heavy, but honestly it makes for one of the most tense and memorable scenes of the movie. Unfortunately, Ross Bacon, who plays Mr. Tivoli, passed away in May 2021, 5 months before the release of Halloween Kills. But he's great in this role, and I can't think of a single bad part of his performance. Sheriff Barker, on the other hand, kind of just mopes here, and is just sad that he can't control a single person. He's so useless in this trilogy, and honestly doesn't need to be here at all. It was like an ongoing joke that my brother and I had throughout this trilogy to see him just moping around, not being able to control anyone. Anyway, Hawkins reveals that in 1978, the police covered up the fact that he accidentally shot his partner, and they ended up reporting that the officer accidentally shot himself in a scuffle with Michael, which is actually something that tends to happen in police forces. This is just another way that the film tries to talk about the political and social anxieties of our world. Hawkins reveals to Laurie that Michael wasn't after her at all, and that Dr. Sartain was the one who brought Michael to her. He noticed in 1978 that Michael's only intention was to go home, and that's probably what his intentions are tonight. At the same time, Lonnie also realizes that the path that Michael is taking is a direct path from Laurie's house back to the Myers house. Karen rightfully blames the mob, herself, and Tommy for the events of tonight, and says that none of them are innocent. Tommy volunteers to take her to Michael because he says he has to keep trying. Lonnie decides to face his fears of going into the Myers house alone, like he wouldn't do in 1978. I don't think now is the time to make amends for childhood regrets, because this isn't an urban legend anymore. They fully expect Michael to be in this house, so I don't know why he'd even go in alone, but whatever. Allison and Cameron hear a gunshot, and they go into the house after Lonnie. I love how Michael has taken it upon himself to do some redecorating by putting a pumpkin in the closet and setting up the John's corpses just like their picture. Like I said earlier, it's great to see that Michael never lost his passion for interior design. I know I said I never wanted to see the shape in compromising positions, but there was a shot in the trailer of Michael sitting at the vanity like Judith was the night he killed her. This shot didn't make the movie, but I would have loved to see the context of it. I also wouldn't mind seeing Michael figure out what music to put on the record player while we're at it. When Cameron is searching the house, his father's bloody corpse starts dripping from the attic, so in a way, it's a nice full circle moment to see Lonnie die in the Myers house, 40 years after he was afraid to go in, even though I hate the idea of him going in alone. Cameron is attacked by Michael, and Allison tries to save him, but Michael knocks the gun out of her hand, and Allison can only deliver a couple stabs before being knocked down the stairs and breaking her leg. Michael seemingly toys with Allison and makes her watch him break Cameron's neck. Maybe as revenge for her being involved in locking him in the fire earlier, or maybe Michael is just a dick. On his way down the steps, he even sees that Cameron is still barely alive, and he decides to finish the job. Michael and Allison start going at it, and when it looks like Allison is about to be stabbed, she yells, "Do it," and I love the confused head tilt that Michael gives. But she's not talking to him, she's talking to her mother Karen, who stabs Michael with a pitchfork. Once again, it's just one stab, so it's not a kill shot, but the most effective thing she does is take Michael's mask from him, which takes all of his focus off of Allison. Now, while I've been on board with most of the dialogue so far, Karen's speech to Michael about how he killed his sister on Halloween night is so bad. If anyone knows the story of Judith's death, it's the guy who did it, so why are you even saying this? Michael starts after Karen and tries to get his mask, and this further proves that this mask is something symbolic to Michael. I don't think it's actually a supernatural thing, because Michael has killed without it before, but I think to him it is. It's something he needs and is one of the few things in this world that he actually does care about. It could be because he's just a 6-year-old boy in his head and he just likes wearing masks, but whatever it is, it stops his killing spree momentarily until he gets it back. Karen lures him to another street and leaves his mask for him, which we'll learn was a big mistake. She also tells him gotcha, which she did hours prior to this in the basement, and I don't think you can gotcha Michael twice in one night, and if you do, you have to make sure you actually got him the second time. Michael was greeted by the most unprepared mob of all time. Maybe they lost all the productive ones after the Mr. Tivoli incident, but these guys are useless. Sheriff Brackett delivers his "It's Halloween, everyone's entitled to one good scare" line to Michael, which is another line that doesn't make sense because he never said that to Michael, he said it to Laurie. It's a dumb line, and it's pretty much just for the fans of the movie that doesn't make sense in the context of the film. And most of this mob is armed by 2x4s, hockey sticks, and an iron. Only a couple of them have guns. Michael puts his mask on and takes the hits that he knows he can take. And when he's about to get shot point blank in the head, he slices the guy's arm and takes the shots in the body instead. Even Karen grabs the knife that Michael was reaching for and stabs him in the back. She's not smart enough to slice his throat or an artery or anything. Now, I think a normal man wouldn't be able to live through this, but if you're going to show your villain going through a beating like this, it's a nice touch to not actually show the mob delivering a death blow to him. Laurie gives a speech about how she used to think Michael was flesh and blood, but a mortal man couldn't survive this. I don't think it's meant to be taken literally, but the more Michael kills, the more his legend grows, and the more fear he spreads. Allison even takes a line that was supposed to be about her deceased father and applies it to Michael. He'll always be here, even when we can't see him. After Michael's masterpiece, he will have left scars on this town that will never heal. And we'll see in the next film that the town will start turning on each other even when Michael is gone. And that is the true curse of Michael Myers. In a shot that parallels Loomis about to shoot Michael in the head in 1978, Sheriff Brackett is about to deliver the kill shot on Michael, and Michael finally springs to action and throws the knife at Brackett's throat. The bullets were wasted on Michael's torso, so they can't shoot him in the head, and we see a montage of Michael just ripping through the mob as if they were nothing. Michael is a pro at laying dormant until the time is right, and this is just an example of it. And no one in the mob stood a chance because they let their emotions get the best of them and they were unprepared. Instead of strategically going at him like Tommy planned, they just went at him without a plan, and it didn't work. Karen sees a young Michael staring out of his sister's bedroom window. He's not literally there, but since Karen thinks Michael is dead, I think this is her moment of wanting some closure and wanting to see what Michael sees when he stares out of his window. When she's staring out the window, Michael appears behind her and kills her in a nice tribute to the shower scene in Psycho. It's a well-shot kill with close-ups of Karen's face while the knife is swinging, and as Karen drops, we see Michael staring out the window, and we hear him breathe, and the film ends. I think out of all the Halloween films, this is probably the most accessible to a mainstream audience or a casual slasher fan. It's one of my favorite sequels, and I just love how this movie is essentially Michael's masterpiece and nothing more. It's a little bit heavy-handed with the social commentary, and it does have some dumb characters, but horror has always been a reflection of society, and characters in slasher films have always been dumb. Unfortunately, Halloween Kills doesn't have the nostalgia that the 80s slasher films have, so it seems like people haven't accepted it, but I personally love it. It's also one of the better looking Halloween films, and how can I not mention the tremendous score by John Carpenter, Cody Carpenter, and Daniel Davies. And one of the most important aspects of this film is that it makes me appreciate the 2018 film even more than I already did. Halloween Kills does a great job at expanding the universe and characters established in the previous film. I also do love the direction they went with Halloween Ends, but that's a different discussion for a different time. Anyway, thank you all for watching and listening to my thoughts. Happy Halloween, and evil dies tonight.